The twin suns burned above the endless desert, their heat wrapping the land in a golden haze. A lonely human mechanic named Eli Grant worked inside his old workshop at the edge of the colony. The place was quiet. Too quiet. Rusted machines lay scattered around like forgotten bones. Eli's hands were covered in grease as he tried to fix a broken power cell, muttering softly. Another day, another failure. He was poor, but he never complained. Every bolt, every wire, every tool he owned was his only treasure. Life wasn't easy for a human living on the border of alien-controlled space. The Varn Dominion ruled these lands, and humans were nothing more than cheap labor. But Eli had one gift. They called him the man who could fix anything. As the night fell, Eli stepped outside to get some air. The horizon was glowing faintly blue. Then, without warning, a fireball tore across the sky. It roared like thunder, leaving a long trail of smoke behind. Eli's heart jumped. It wasn't a meteor. It was a ship, and it was crashing fast. He grabbed his old hoverbike and raced into the dunes, dust rising behind him like smoke. The wind howled against his face, and his heart beat faster with every passing second. When he reached the crash site, he froze in disbelief. Before him lay a massive alien ship, half buried in the sand, its metal glowing hot and cracked. Strange energy flickered from the hull. The air smelled of burning ozone. Then he heard something, a weak voice. "Help, please." Eli ran toward the sound. As he climbed over a broken wing, he saw them, two enormous alien women. They were easily twice his height, their skin glowing faintly with silver patterns. One lay on the ground, bleeding from her shoulder. The other tried to stand, her eyes full of fear. Their faces were unlike any species he'd seen, beautiful yet otherworldly, with long hair that shimmered like liquid glass. The injured one whispered, "Don't come closer, human. The ship is unstable." But Eli ignored the warning. He pulled her arm around his shoulder, struggling to lift her weight. "You'll die if I leave you here," he said firmly. The ship groaned behind them, sparks flying everywhere. The second sister tried to help, but her leg was injured. Together they stumbled through the sand as the wreck exploded behind them, lighting up the night sky. Eli dragged them back to his workshop, his body aching. He didn't know why he risked his life. Maybe it was the way the younger one looked at him, not with hatred like most aliens, but with hope. Inside his small workshop, he laid them down carefully. The older sister, barely conscious, whispered, Why would you help us? We are not your kind." Eli gave a small smile. "You needed help. That's enough." He used his limited medical supplies to clean their wounds. His hands trembled as he saw their strange blood glowing faintly blue. They watched him silently, confused by his kindness. For a human mechanic with almost nothing, he treated them like royalty. Hours passed. The younger sister, curious and gentle, looked around his workshop. She touched one of his old robots. "You fix machines, but why live here alone?" she asked softly. Eli sighed. "Because this is the only place left where no one orders me around." The room fell silent again. Outside, the wind carried the echo of alien patrol ships searching the area. Eli looked through his dusty window and saw lights moving in the distance. He whispered, "If they find you here, they'll kill us all." The older sister tried to sit up. "We can leave by morning. Our people. They will find us soon." Eli shook his head. "Your ship is destroyed. You won't last an hour in the desert." For a moment their eyes met, human and alien, two worlds that were never meant to cross. As the night deepened, Eli worked on repairing one of their communication devices. Sparks flew as he rewired alien circuits. The sisters watched silently, realizing this small, fragile man had more courage than most warriors they had ever known. Then suddenly, a sound echoed through the desert, the deep rumble of approaching ships. The alien sisters' eyes widened. Their empire was coming, and if they found them in a human's care, Eli's kindness could mean his death. The night wasn't over. It was only the beginning. The next morning, The desert lay silent under the burning suns. The crash site was nothing more than a smoking hole, and Eli Grant's small workshop stood lonely against the dunes. Inside, the smell of oil mixed with something new. Alien medicine. The two giant sisters were awake now, sitting quietly as light filtered through the dusty window. Eli placed a bowl of water on the table. "Here," he said simply, his voice still rough from exhaustion. The younger sister smiled faintly. "Thank you, human." Her voice was soft, but carried a strange musical tone that echoed slightly, as if her words vibrated in the air. Eli nodded. "My name's Eli. You?" The taller sister with deep silver eyes and hair that shimmered like molten metal answered first. "I am Vela of the Varn Dominion." Her tone was proud, commanding. Then she glanced at the other. "And this is my sister, Saren." Saren gave a small wave, her curiosity clear. She looked around at the cluttered room filled with rusted parts, old power cells, and dusty screens. "You live here alone?" she asked softly. Eli gave a tired chuckle. "Yeah, it's quiet. Machines don't talk back. Mostly." Saren tilted her head, watching him fix a damaged heating coil. Her glowing skin shimmered faintly. "You risked your life to help us. You didn't even know who we were." Eli shrugged. "Didn't matter. You needed help." Vela studied him in silence. Her kind didn't expect mercy from humans. The Varn Empire had ruled over many colonies, and humans were considered weak, barely tolerated. Yet this man, poor, dirty, and alone, had defied every belief she'd been taught. Suddenly a low hum came from outside. Eli's eyes narrowed. He stepped to the window and saw drones sweeping over the dunes, scanning for survivors. His heart pounded. "They're looking for you." Vela's eyes widened. "The Emperor's search ships. They must not find us here." Eli quickly covered the window with an old tarp. "They'll scan heat signatures. Stay low." He switched off the power and grabbed his tool scanner. "Your ship sent out a distress signal, didn't it?" Saren nodded guiltily. "It was automatic. We couldn't stop it." The drones passed overhead, beams of blue light scanning the sand. For a moment, the workshop glowed faintly as the sensors swept across it. Eli held his breath. The sound of engines faded. Silence returned. He exhaled slowly. That was close. Vela looked at him, truly seeing him for the first time. "You risked your life again, human." "Why?" Eli leaned against the wall, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Because if I didn't, I'd be no better than the people who left me to die years ago." Her gaze softened for a moment. She didn't answer. Later that day, Eli worked outside under the burning sun, scavenging metal scraps to repair the alien device he'd taken from their wreck. Saren followed him, curious. She picked up a piece of wiring and asked, "Do all humans fix things like you?" Eli smiled faintly. "No. Most just try to survive. Fixing things keeps me sane." She watched his hands move quickly, twisting wires and cleaning circuits with a careful precision. "You remind me of our engineers," she said. "But smaller." Eli laughed quietly. "Thanks, I guess." Inside, Vela was trying to contact someone using the small communication module Eli had managed to power. Static filled the air, but no voice came through. She frowned. "Our beacon is jammed. The rebels must still be nearby." Eli looked up sharply. "Rebels?" Vela nodded grimly. "We were attacked by a group that wants to overthrow our empire. They will kill anyone who helps us." Eli froze. He realized what that meant. Not only could the empire punish him, but the rebels might come first. Either way, he was trapped. That night, Eli couldn't sleep. The wind howled outside, rattling the metal walls. Through the cracks, he could see Saren sitting by the window, watching the stars. Her eyes glowed faintly in the dark. "You should rest," Eli said quietly. She smiled. "You humans. Always working, always worrying. My sister says you're foolish. I think you're brave." Eli looked away, embarrassed. "Brave doesn't feed you." Saren tilted her head. Maybe not, but it gives others hope. A moment of silence passed. Outside, the desert shimmered under the twin moons. Eli looked at the sky where the alien fleet might be hiding beyond the horizon. He didn't know it yet, but helping these sisters would soon change not just his life, but the fate of his entire species. Then a sudden beep broke the calm. Viola rushed from the back room holding the communication module. "It's working," she whispered. Through the static, a deep voice came, metallic and powerful. "This is the Imperial fleet. Identify yourself." Viola's eyes widened. "It's him. The Emperor has heard the distress call." Eli's blood ran cold. He looked out the window toward the horizon. A faint glow began to rise in the sky, too steady to be stars. "The Emperor?" he muttered. Viola nodded, her voice trembling. "He's coming here, it's for us." The horizon glowed crimson as dawn crept across the desert. Eli Grant stood outside his workshop, the sand cool beneath his boots. The twin suns hadn't yet risen, but a different light shimmered in the sky, a fleet. Dark shapes moved above the clouds, massive and silent, casting long shadows over the dunes. He felt the ground tremble as the first sound waves reached him. Inside, Viola and Saren watched through the cracked window, their expressions grim. Viola's jaw tightened. "It's them. The Imperial ships. My father's fleet." Eli turned sharply. "Your father?" Viola hesitated, then spoke quietly. "The Emperor of the Varn Dominion." Eli blinked in disbelief. The women he'd rescued, covered in dust and blood, were royalty. His hands tightened around the wrench he still held. "You mean, you're the Emperor's daughters?" Saren nodded softly. "If the Empire finds out we were with a human—" Her voice trailed off. She didn't finish, but the fear in her eyes said enough. Outside, loudspeakers thundered across the desert. A robotic voice echoed through the canyons. "Attention! Any human sheltering fugitives of the Varn Dominion will face immediate extermination. Report sightings at once," the warning repeated, shaking the air. The colony, miles away, would already be panicking. Eli could almost hear the fear spreading among the people. Rumors, suspicion, betrayal. Viola's tone hardened. "They'll scan every structure within 100 kilometers. If they detect us here, your colony will burn." Eli rubbed his forehead, thinking fast. "Then we hide you somewhere they won't look." But before he could act, a thunderous roar split the sky. A smaller dropship broke away from the fleet, speeding toward the desert floor. Eli grabbed his binoculars and cursed under his breath. "They're sending search squads." He rushed inside, motioning for them to follow. "We can't stay here." Viola's instincts kicked in. "There's a canyon 2 kilometers west. The magnetic rocks there can mask energy signals." Eli nodded. "Then we move now." He packed supplies, water, a toolkit, and a small fusion lantern, and guided the sisters out the back exit. The desert wind was sharp, cutting through the silence. Every few minutes they heard distant booms, patrol ships landing, scanning, destroying whatever they suspected. By the time they reached the canyon, the suns were rising, painting the sky orange and gold. The walls of the canyon shimmered faintly with mineral dust, reflecting the light like glass. Eli led them into a narrow cave at the base of the cliffs. He turned to the sisters. "You'll be safe here for now." Viola placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch surprisingly gentle. "You've done enough. If you stay, they'll kill you too." Eli looked at her, then at Saren. "If I leave you, they'll find you within an hour. I'll draw their scanners away." Saren's eyes widened. "No, you'll die!" He gave a tired grin. "Maybe. But I'm good at fixing problems, and this one needs a distraction." Before they could stop him, Eli climbed back onto his hoverbike. The engine roared to life, echoing through the canyons. He drove toward the open desert, kicking up a trail of dust. He switched on his workshop's old transmitter, broadcasting an energy pulse, the same kind the aliens would be tracking. Within minutes, 2 patrol ships changed direction, locking onto his signal. Inside the canyon, Saren clutched her sister's arm. "He's leading them away." Viola's chest tightened. For the first time in her life, someone, a human, was risking everything for her. She'd seen soldiers die for the Empire, but never for compassion. Never for her. Eli's hoverbike sped across the sand, dodging energy blasts that scorched the ground around him. The ship's cannons roared overhead. He could feel the heat from each shot. His hands trembled, but he kept control, swerving between dunes until his bike finally skidded to a stop near an old wreck. He jumped off, diving behind the metal hull as an explosion tore through the air. The wreckage shielded him just enough. He pulled a small device from his pocket, a modified capacitor, and hurled it toward the nearest ship. The blast created a blinding EMP shockwave, knocking the patrol systems offline. Both ships spiraled out of control, crashing in flames a few hundred meters away. Eli lay in the sand, coughing, ears ringing. His heart pounded. He had survived. Barely. Back in the canyon, Viola watched the sky glow from the explosions. Her voice shook. He did it, Saren's eyes filled with tears. He saved us again. But their moment of relief didn't last. From far above, the voice of the Emperor himself came through the communicator, deep and resonant. To the one who aided my daughters, you will face judgment when I arrive. Viola's blood ran cold. She whispered, he knows. And as the shadow of the Emperor's flagship spread across the desert, Eli Grant, poor human mechanic, alone and broken, had unknowingly become the center of a galactic storm. The desert was burning again by midday. Smoke from the downed patrol ships twisted in the air like black serpents, rising toward the crimson sky. Eli Grant crouched behind the wreckage, his face streaked with dust and sweat. His heart still pounded from the chase. The engines of the alien ships had fallen silent, but he knew the calm wouldn't last. The Emperor's fleet was above the clouds now, watching, listening, hunting. He looked down at the cracked communicator he'd taken from the patrol. Its lights flickered weakly. He spoke into it anyway.
Viola, Saren, do you read me?
A burst of static answered. Then Saren's trembling voice broke through.
Eli, you're alive.
We saw the explosions. He smiled faintly. Still breathing, for now. You two need to move. They'll search again soon. Vela's voice replaced her sister's, firm and commanding. You can't fight the Empire, human. Stop this foolishness and run. If they capture you, they will make an example of you before all colonies. Eli laughed dryly. Story of my life. People have been trying to make an example out of me since I was born. He looked toward the distant horizon. A faint shimmer of metal caught his eye. The Imperial command ship descending. He had little time. Eli sprinted back to his hoverbike, grabbed the last of his spare fuel, and kicked the engine to life. The sound echoed across the dunes as he sped toward the canyon. Sand whipped against his goggles. Every few minutes, shadows swept across the ground, massive carriers hovering above, scanning everything below. Meanwhile, deep in the canyon, Viola and Saren had already begun preparing their damaged ship. The wrecked escape craft had landed half buried in sand, its hull fractured and energy coils exposed. Eli's earlier repairs had helped, but it still wasn't ready to fly. Vela worked quickly, her strong hands steady even as the earth trembled from explosions in the distance. Saren, power up the auxiliary core. We need full thrust when he arrives. Saren's fingers danced across the glowing control pads. It's unstable, sister. If we rush the ignition, it might overload. Vela glanced toward the mouth of the canyon. Better we burn in the sky than die on our knees. Moments later, Eli's bike appeared, kicking up a cloud of dust. He skidded to a stop beside them, coughing hard. They're scanning again. We need to move now. Saren ran to him, her eyes wide. You shouldn't have come back. Couldn't leave you behind, he said with a tired smile. Besides, I fixed your power stabilizer. You'll need it to fly. He handed Vela a small energy cell he'd scavenged from the wrecked patrol. Use this. It'll boost your lift engines. Vela hesitated for the briefest moment, then took it. You are a fool, human, but a brave one. Together they worked fast, tightening panels, sealing cracks, reconnecting circuits. The ship groaned, the metal creaking like a wounded animal. The ground shook as heavy footsteps approached. Imperial soldiers, tall and armored, moving in formation. The sound of their plasma rifles hummed through the canyon. Eli's stomach turned. They're here. Vela looked at her sister. Get inside the ship, Saren refused. Not without him. Eli shouted over the noise. I'll hold them off, just go. He grabbed an old plasma cutter and took cover behind a rock wall. The first soldiers appeared, towering figures in obsidian armor, eyes glowing red. Blasts of energy scorched the ground around him. Eli fired the plasma cutter like a weapon, the beam slicing through a soldier's armor before overheating and exploding. Eli, Saren screamed, but Viola pulled her back into the ship. He knows what he's doing! Inside the cockpit, the ship's systems flickered to life. The engines roared, shaking the ground. Viola gritted her teeth as warning lights flashed red across the control panel. Come on, come on. Outside, Eli ran toward the ship as soldiers closed in from all sides. Laser fire streaked past him. One blast caught his shoulder, spinning him to the ground. Pain seared through him, but he forced himself up. Go, he shouted hoarsely. The ship's turbine screamed, lifting off the sand in a swirl of fire and smoke. Saren reached out from the open hatch, tears running down her silver cheeks. Eli, he looked up, smiling weakly. You owe me one. With a thunderous roar, the ship rose into the sky, leaving a trail of blue light behind. Imperial soldiers fired after it, their shots fading into the distance. Eli stumbled backward, collapsing beside his wrecked bike. His vision blurred, the suns blazing above him. He laughed faintly, whispering to himself, "Guess that worked." Above the desert, Vela piloted the crippled ship through the storm clouds, her hands trembling. "He's gone," Saren whispered. Vela's eyes glistened. "No, little sister. He's not gone. He bought us our freedom." Far below, the Emperor's flagship touched down near the ruins of Eli's workshop. The air shimmered as the colossal figure stepped out, tall, armored, and crowned with glowing gold. His voice rolled like thunder. "Find the human, the one who defied the Empire. I wish to meet him, myself." The twin suns had risen high over the desert, turning the sand into waves of molten gold. Smoke still curled from the wrecked patrols and Eli's half-burned workshop. The air shimmered with heat and tension. Every living being in the colony could feel it, the presence of something enormous descending from the sky. The Emperor's flagship broke through the clouds like a falling moon. It was vast. Its shadow swallowed the dunes, its engines thundered like 1,000 storms. As it landed, the ground cracked beneath the weight. The noise was deafening, but the silence that followed was worse. Out of the ship marched an army of Imperial guards, their armor glinting black and silver, moving with machine-like precision. And then he appeared, Emperor Kalar Varn, ruler of the Dominion. He was unlike any alien Eli had ever seen. His towering form radiated power. His skin shimmered with faint blue light under the armor lined with gold. His eyes, cold and ancient, scanned the wasteland like a god searching for a sinner. The soldiers formed ranks around the burning wreckage of Eli's workshop. The Emperor raised one hand and the entire army fell silent. He spoke, his voice calm yet carrying across the entire desert. "Bring me the human who dared to touch royal blood." The words echoed like thunder. A search began immediately. Dozens of drones spread through the dunes, scanning every cave, every ruin. It didn't take long before one drone found movement, a faint human heat signature near the canyon. Eli Grant was alive but barely conscious. His shoulder burned from the plasma wound and sand clung to his skin. When he heard the ships approaching again, he laughed weakly. "Guess they're not done with me yet." The next moment, energy nets surrounded him. Two towering soldiers marched forward, grabbing him by the arms and dragging him through the sand. He didn't resist. He was too tired. The world around him shimmered as they brought him before the Emperor himself. The soldiers threw him to his knees in the blazing heat. Eli squinted up through the sunlight. The Emperor stood only a few feet away, taller than any being he'd ever seen, his shadow stretching over Eli's body like a mountain. "So," the Emperor said softly, his tone unreadable, "you are the one who saved my daughters." Eli coughed, trying to find his voice. "Didn't know they were yours. Just saw people who needed help." The Emperor studied him silently. His expression gave nothing away, but his soldiers tensed, ready to strike at a single word. "You defied my orders," he said. "You harbored fugitives, interfered with Imperial affairs, and destroyed my ships." Eli managed a grin despite the pain. "To be fair, those ships tried to kill me first." A dangerous pause followed. The soldiers aimed their weapons, but the Emperor lifted a hand. "Stop." He stepped closer until his shadow covered Eli's face. "Why didn't you sell them? Turn them in? A poor human like you could have been rich beyond measure." Eli met his gaze. "Because I'm not like you." That silence again. It stretched long enough for the wind to howl through the dunes. The Emperor's eyes narrowed, then softened. He turned slightly, gesturing to the sky. A bright light appeared overhead, a royal transport descending fast. The air shimmered with golden energy as the ship landed beside them. When the ramp opened, Viola and Saren stepped out, alive and unharmed. The crowd of soldiers bowed their heads instantly. The sisters hurried forward, ignoring protocol, their eyes wide with emotion. Saren dropped to her knees beside Eli, tears glimmering like silver glass. He saved us, Father, twice. He bled for us. Eli looked at her weakly. You'd made it out. Vela stood tall before her father. He risked everything for us. Without him, your daughters would be dead. For a long moment, the Emperor said nothing. The soldiers shifted nervously, waiting for judgment. Finally, Kalar turned back to Eli. You are a human mechanic, poor, fragile, and mortal. Yet you acted with honor even my own generals lack. Eli said nothing. He just stared, wondering if this was a dream before his death. Then the Emperor did something no one expected. He knelt. Gasps spread through the army. The ground itself seemed to hold its breath. The Emperor of the Varn Dominion, conqueror of 12 worlds, bowed before a human. You saved what I treasure most, he said quietly. And in doing so, you reminded me that compassion is not weakness. He stood again and gestured to his guards. Release him! The soldiers stepped back instantly. The Emperor turned to his daughters. Prepare the gift. From the royal transport, attendants carried a small metallic cube glowing with blue energy. The star core, a source of infinite power. The Emperor held it out to Eli. Take this. It will power your colony for centuries. Humanity will live because of your courage. Eli stared at the gift, speechless. I don't deserve this. The Emperor's lips curved into the faintest smile. Perhaps not, but you earned it. As the Emperor's ship began to rise again, the desert winds roared. Saren gave Eli one last look, sad, warm, and full of something he didn't understand. We'll see you again, human. Eli stood alone among the sand and smoke, the star core glowing in his trembling hands. The Emperor's words still echoed in his mind. Compassion is not weakness. And for the first time in his life, Eli believed it. The suns had begun to set, painting the desert in shades of red and violet. The wind whispered across the dunes, carrying the last echoes of engines fading into the sky. Eli Grant stood alone beside the wreck of his old workshop, the sand glowing faintly under the twin moons. In his trembling hands, he held the star core, a small cube that pulsed with blue light, alive like a beating heart. He still couldn't believe what had just happened. The Emperor of the Varn Dominion, the most powerful being in the galaxy, had bowed before him, a poor human mechanic who owned nothing but a broken wrench and a stubborn heart. Eli turned the cube slowly in his hand. It was warm to the touch, humming softly like a distant song. He had heard stories about star cores. They could power cities, fuel ships for centuries, or even revive dead worlds. Entire wars had been fought over them. And now one rested in his palm. He stared up at the fading contrails of the Emperor's ship. You must be crazy, he muttered to himself. Giving something like this to me? From behind him came a familiar voice. He gave it to you because you earned it. Eli spun around. Two tall figures stood at the edge of the dunes, Vela and Saren, the giant alien sisters he'd saved. The setting sun made their silver skin gleam like starlight. They looked different now, stronger, calmer, but their eyes still carried warmth. Didn't think I'd see you again, Eli said with a tired smile. Saren stepped closer, her eyes bright. We couldn't leave without saying goodbye. Vela nodded, her voice firm but softer than before. My father wanted to reward you with golden status, but I told him that wasn't what you valued. Eli laughed under his breath. You were right about that. He gestured toward the cube. What am I supposed to do with this thing? It's too much power for one person. Saren knelt down, her large hand hovering near his. Use it to help your people. You gave us a chance to live. Now we give you the same. Eli looked at the glowing cube again. The faint hum seemed to grow stronger, as if it understood their words. Vela looked toward the distant colony lights flickering on the horizon. Your world struggles for energy, doesn't it? The star core will bring light back to your kind. My father meant it as a symbol of respect and of peace. Eli's voice softened. Peace between humans and the Varn? Viola's lips curved slightly. If it begins with one man, why not? For a long time, none of them spoke. The desert wind howled softly, wrapping them in silence. Eli finally broke it with a low chuckle. You know, when I woke up yesterday, I just wanted to fix a water pump. Now I've apparently changed intergalactic politics. Saren laughed, her voice like wind chimes. You humans have a strange way of finding trouble. Eli smiled faintly. We call it luck. Vela turned serious again. You should leave soon. Others will come looking for that core. Not everyone in the Empire agrees with my father's mercy. Eli nodded slowly. Then I'll hide it, Until I can use it to help others. Saren looked at him with sadness in her eyes. You really are different, Eli. When we first met, I thought you were weak, small, fragile. But now I see you're stronger than anyone I've ever known. He shrugged, trying to play it off. Guess I'm just too stubborn to die. Viola reached into a small satchel at her side and pulled out a thin metal band engraved with alien symbols. Take this, she said. It's our family seal. If any Varn soldier ever threatens you or your people, show them this. They will kneel. Eli hesitated, then accepted it. And if they don't? Viola's eyes glowed faintly. Then they'll answer to me. The three of them stood there as the last rays of sunlight disappeared. For a brief moment it felt peaceful, the kind of peace Eli hadn't known in years. When their ship's engines roared to life, Saren hesitated at the ramp. Will you be all right? She asked. Eli smiled faintly. I've got a star core, 2 alien friends, and a desert full of stories to tell. I'll manage. Vela gave a final nod. Then this is farewell, human. Until the stars call us again. The ship rose slowly, its blue thrusters lighting up the dark sky. Eli watched until it vanished into the clouds. The night was quiet again. He turned toward the colony lights in the distance, the star core glowing brighter in his hand. He whispered to himself, Guess it's time to bring some light back home. And as he walked across the sands, a soft pulse of blue spread from the cube like a heartbeat reaching into the horizon. The energy rolled across the desert, lighting the sky for miles. For the first time in decades, the human colony glowed like a living star. The next morning, the desert no longer looked dead. The once dark horizon shimmered with light as streams of blue energy flowed toward the human colony. The star core's pulse had awakened ancient machines buried beneath the sands, power grids, solar arrays, forgotten towers once left to rot. Now they glowed with life again. Eli Grant stood on a hill overlooking the colony, his clothes torn, his hands still stained with grease and dried blood, but on his face was something rare, a smile. For the first time in years, the colony lights burned brighter than the sun's. Down below, people gathered outside their shelters, shielding their eyes as the streets flickered alive. Children laughed, touching glowing walls that hadn't lit up in decades. The hum of electricity returned like the sound of a heartbeat. An old man pointed toward the sky. It's a miracle. But others whispered, It's the work of that mechanic, the one who lives in the desert. Word spread fast. By noon, a crowd had gathered at Eli's workshop. They found him standing beside the glowing cube, now sealed inside a containment unit. Its gentle pulse filled the air with warmth. A young boy stepped forward. Did you really bring power back, Mr. Eli? Eli smiled faintly and knelt. Not me, kid. Just a little help from the stars. They didn't understand the meaning behind his words, but they felt his sincerity. The people cheered his name. Eli Grant, the star mechanic. He shook his head. I'm no hero, he muttered under his breath. But deep down, he knew something had changed. Not just for him, but for all of humanity. As night fell, the desert transformed. Energy lines danced across the dunes, feeding the colony's generators. Drones began reactivating themselves, guided by the star core's signal. Humanity, once forgotten and left to die under alien rule, was alive again. That night, Eli sat outside his workshop watching the stars. The wind was soft, carrying the faint hum of power through the air. In his hand, he held the metal band Viola had given him, the royal seal of House Varn. Its symbols glowed faintly, reacting to the star core's energy. He chuckled quietly. You really kept your promise, didn't you? A light streaked across the sky, an alien ship fast and bright. For a moment, he thought it was them. Viola and Saren watching from orbit. He raised his hand slightly toward the stars. Safe travels, sisters of the stars, he whispered. Days turned into weeks. The star core continued to feed the colony, transforming the barren land into a thriving oasis. Crops grew again, machines hummed, and humans began rebuilding. But the most surprising change came from the Varn Dominion itself. Instead of sending more soldiers, the Emperor sent envoys, not to rule, but to talk. They carried messages of peace and trade, and each envoy bowed first before speaking, a gesture that no alien had ever shown to humans before. They called it the Emperor's Vow, a promise made after a human's act of courage reminded a ruler of compassion. Eli refused titles or riches. He stayed in his workshop, fixing machines and teaching children how to repair old tech. He became a quiet legend, the man who turned kindness into a weapon stronger than any fleet. One night, months later, as Eli was adjusting an engine core, his radio crackled to life. A familiar voice whispered through the static. "Eli Grant, this is Saren of House Varn. If you can hear this..."
"We are safe."
"Father has kept his word. The stars remember your name." Eli froze, a smile breaking across his face. "Took you long enough," he said softly. "Guess I'm famous now." The signal faded, but the warmth in her voice lingered like a song carried by the wind. He stepped outside and looked up again at the night sky. The colony lights glowed behind him like a sea of blue fire. Above, 2 stars shone brighter than all the rest, twin lights moving side by side, heading deeper into the galaxy. Eli raised the royal band, its symbols gleaming in the moonlight. "Until the stars call us again," he murmured, echoing Vila's words. The wind picked up, swirling sand around him like golden dust. The desert, once empty and silent, now hummed with life. And somewhere in the far reaches of the galaxy, stories began to spread. Of a poor human mechanic who saved 2 alien princesses, who stood before an emperor without fear, and who gave light back to his dying people. They called him many names. The human who shamed an empire. The starborn mechanic. The savior of the sands. But Eli never cared for titles. For him it was simple. One man helped 2 strangers, and in return the universe changed. As dawn approached, the first light touched the dunes once more. Eli sat quietly on his hill, tools in hand, as the colony stirred below. The stars above flickered like distant friends, and with a small smile he whispered, "Not bad for a poor mechanic."